because we learned from the plant-based meat boom and bust that like it was more expensive, it tasted worse, and it was less healthy, and it just didn't work. People aren't going to pull their wallet out for sustainability. So yeah, we need to do all those other things better if it's going to work. We know that when you're blending in 25% prefer, it tastes just the same.
What is it made of? That's my biggest question.
Our coffee is made from.
You're watching Next Big Wave, the podcast for founders by founders in Southeast Asia. In this episode, we're going to talk about founder journeys, growth strategies, and much more. Just to help me out, if you could like and subscribe, it would be awesome. And let's get into the episode.
All right, so welcome to today's episode of Next Big Wave. Today I'm with Jake Berber, the founder of Prefer. Prefer is a food tech business, which I'm really excited to talk about because I haven't had many on the podcast. You're tackling a major market, which is coffee, and you've got an innovative approach to that industry. So, Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Cool. So just for anyone who doesn't know you, and there might not be many because you've been very active on LinkedIn, you've had a lot of PR about your product. So can you give us an intro about yourself, where you're from, what you're working on right now?
Yeah, I'm Jake Berber, co-founder and CEO of Prefer. We make coffee without using coffee beans. I'm originally from Texas. I went to university in California, lived and worked in Tel Aviv for a few years, and then just moved to Singapore about 2 years ago.
Sweet. So one thing I'm really curious about when I have sort of expats on the podcast is what brought you to Southeast Asia and why Singapore out of all places?
Yeah, I came to Singapore all under the umbrella of curiosity, but it was for both school and work. So I was very curious about what was going on in Asia, and Singapore seemed to be, from an outside perspective, the most Western of the Asian countries. So interesting because of that. And then also, I was getting my MBA at Tel Aviv University, and they had an exchange program with NUS here in Singapore. And at the same time, I was working as a venture capitalist, investing in food technology, and my venture capital fund wanted me to come scout for startups here in Southeast Asia. So yeah, for all of those reasons, Singapore seemed like an amazing next step. But I was just supposed to be here for 3 months for that exchange program, but then ended up meeting my co-founder and starting Prefer.
Good stuff. And yeah, you kind of mentioned having worked in VC, but your background is originally in neuroscience. Then you went into real estate and then investing in food tech and building your own food tech. So can you walk me through sort of your approach to this whole transition?
Yeah, you're one of the rare that picked up on my short stint in real estate as well. That was actually my first, I guess, official startup.
Hmm.
So yeah, I studied neuroscience, always interested in the brain, especially alternative sources to healing mental health issues. That was always my thing. So I worked in big pharma for a while. Then I joined a biotech startup in Tel Aviv, and that was an amazing experience. But I could say, for lack of a better word, I got a little bit jaded about the space of pharma and biotech, and I started learning more about climate change and really wanted to do my part in fighting climate change. I also started learning more and more about startups. Joining the biotech startup, I was really wanted to understand, like, as a founder, what would that be like to start something on my own. So, Buddy and I in Tel Aviv, we started a real estate company, basically to help people in the U.S. purchase property in Israel, but it was COVID, so people in the U.S. couldn't travel to Israel. So we would do like Zoom viewings of homes. So we made a decent amount of money off that, but it was never
Nice.
my passion was in real estate. It was just about learning how to sort of found something
Okay.
of my own. So then I got a little bit more structured back in the VC role, where I really fell in love with food tech and using food as a lever to fight climate change. And that was just an amazing excuse to talk to founders, learn about technology coming out, knowing in the back of my mind I was looking for something to start in this space one day. And then, yeah, so it seems like one thing sort of led to another, but there's always the background of loving startups and loving science and wanting to do my part in fighting climate change. So yeah, then ended up sort of coming together at Prefer here in Singapore.
So tell me more about Prefer because your t-shirt says it's all bean-free coffee, right? But can I learn more about what goes into making bean-free coffee and you're tackling a market of people who are addicted to a product. Like it's almost a drug and a cult and all that. So is that what you're drinking right now? I'm
This
actually having real coffee because I don't think Prefer
I'm
is
having real
available in
coffee too.
Bangkok.
Yeah, the
Okay.
biggest misconception about Prefer, if there's one thing to leave everyone with, is that we're anti-coffee. I am pro coffee. I love coffee. I am
Okay.
anti I am anti-expensive coffee, and I want to do my part to fight climate change. But I love coffee. Yeah.
Okay. So it is an alternative, though, and doesn't mean you don't have to drink it. But what is it made of? That's my biggest question.
Yeah, so our coffee is made from bread, soy, and barley. And more specifically, the byproducts of bread. So we get get bread from Gardenia, basically bread that didn't sell in the supermarket, send it to us. We get barley from local breweries. So basically, there's spent barley grain that makes beer. We take the spent barley grain, turn it
Hmm.
into coffee. And then we get soy pulp, or also known as okara, which is a byproduct of turning soy bean into soy milk from Mr. Bean. And basically, we put those three ingredients together into our fermentation tank, pitch it with a cocktail of microbes, yeast, fungi that actually are able to reverse engineer the exact flavor compounds that are found in coffee. And then we basically roast this product and grind it up into a ground coffee format that can be used for applications like espresso machines. You can spray dry it and turn it into instant coffee. You can cold brew it and turn it into ready to drink. So the whole idea is that for our customers who are B2B clients that purchase ground coffee, they're getting it in a format that fits into their operations, but they're just getting a more affordable and more sustainable coffee supply.
Okay. And how does it compare? Because you mentioned you're able to mimic some of the flavor profiles. Have you done blind tests? Are people kind of confused about like what are the biggest things you've discovered making something like this?
We've done a bunch of blind tests, and we're finding that not only are people thinking that it's coffee, especially in a latte version, but they're actually preferring the flavors to coffee, especially the younger generation. I would describe it as a nutty, chocolatey coffee flavor. And the younger generation actually like it because it's not so like heavy and bitter, like slap in the face.
Right.
So we're really excited by that because our target market is the Gen Zs or next generation of consumers. So yeah, but I really want to focus on our B2B business, which is actually like not 100% prefer products. So what I mean by that is that we're basically selling to large, fast-moving consumer good companies where they're blending in prefer as like 20-25%, where we're just coming in on the ingredients so that the end product tastes exactly the same. So we're matching their flavors. But for
Hmm.
the business, they're able to decrease cost and decrease carbon footprints. But their customers are happy because the product just tastes as it did anyways.
Okay, but you're making sure to be transparent about this process, or it's kind of like yeah, you know what I mean, like stuffing an alternative as a percentage of the product and still selling it as 100% the product.
No, no, no. So I mean, it's food and beverage. You have to go through the SFA, you have to go through
Right, right,
regulation,
right.
you go through
Fair enough.
labeling, you go through so many different hurdles to get along. So we'll likely come in on the ingredients either as bean-free coffee, where it says the ingredients, bread, soy, barley, list the
Hmm.
allergens. We'll come in maybe as natural flavors. We'll come in as food ingredient XYZ 426, whatever. So it's really up to the company that we work with how they want to present it. We love partners who want to share our brand and share our story on the front of the packaging. But as a start, to just get a foot in the door, it's easier to come in just on the ingredients and then
Right.
sort of go.
Good stuff. So why did you choose B2B? Because this screams like a B2C product. Like, and I've seen some of your posts on LinkedIn, where the first prefer was drank on a private jet, things that are really cool, Gen Z like marketing. So you're doing partly like B2C marketing, but your focus is B2B, right? So to tell me more about that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so our focus is B2B. And to de-risk the market for these large B2B clients, that there is actually an interest in this bean-free coffee. We're sort of making a market. We are proving to them that people are interested in this. So everything we do on the consumer side is basically a show. It's a
Hmm.
show for all these large, fast-moving consumer goods and coffee chains, basically that people are interested in this. So we are marketing like a Gen Z B2C company, but we're not spending a dollar on marketing. We're doing a ton of
Hmm.
guerrilla marketing tactics,
Right.
just to sort of serve as lead generation for these larger clients that will actually make us a valuable business.
Beautiful. And so you're based in Singapore. I'm assuming right now the focus and the scope is Southeast Asia. Where are you guys operating so far?
If you're watching this and you're a B2B startup founder in Southeast Asia, struggling to grow your startup, We have a whole community of founders just like you, and on a weekly basis, we discuss strategies and growth hacks. We'd love to have you amongst us. Feel free to join at nextbigwave.co or find the link in the description. I'll see you there.
Yeah, building out manufacturing here in Singapore for now. We are in the process of going to raise funds that will allow us to build manufacturing somewhere else in Southeast Asia where cost per square meter goes down, price per labor goes down, so we can actually scale below the commodity price of coffee. We're launching in the Philippines with a coffee chain there in November, December, and also speaking with clients in Thailand and India, but those are longer FMCG sales cycles, so likely won't see anything there for a year or so.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. You mentioned fundraising. I think we'll get into that in a minute. I just know that there's a huge coffee culture in Southeast Asia. There has been so many startups in this space, some of them rising and falling very, very fast. I'm thinking like Flash Coffee and whatnot. What does the landscape look like for you, and how does that kind of affect how you're going about it?
We're happy to pick and shovel this race to the bottom. Like they're all racing for cheaper coffee. That's what we
Hmm.
can do for them. So, I mean, we're speaking with all of them. They all know what we do, so we're just finding a way how we can integrate together. I think,
Yep.
yeah, so like I said, there's not too much more to it other than that I'm super glad that there's a lot of money being pushed into the space and that they all have the same goal of something that we can help them with.
Yeah. So I guess you mentioned something you like pick and shovel, which is cool because you're not a B2C product and you're integrating into sort of the recipes of these other competitors, you're not exposed to that risk, right? You're basically just providing a way for them to be cheaper. So yeah, I didn't think about it that way. And I think when I came into this interview, I really saw you more as a B2C, and therefore a lot of the questions I had were around how you compete, but you're not competing, you're just providing a resource to them. That's really cool. And so fundraising, that was the next thing. You kind of raised pretty big sort of seed round, $2 million. I mean, I've been in Southeast Asia and the startup scene for quite a while, and these types of round are not that easy. And you raise money at a time where a lot of people were struggling. So, can you walk me through how you came about these different investors that really believed in you? What made them believe in you so much? And we'll talk about the next round that you're raising maybe in a minute.
Yeah, so headlines are one thing, journey and roller coaster of the fundraise is another thing. Like you see Prefer raised $2 million a year after we started the company, all that, but like what really happened was like sleepless nights and so many no's and like who knows if
Mm,
that one investor that came in, would we even be in existence today? And if we didn't get money in the bank the month that we did, we wouldn't have made payroll the next month. So like there was all these terrible things and concerning things going on, but headlines read Prefer raised 2 million. But what was successful for us is sharing this large problem that we're going over, that there's many different crops that are being threatened by climate change,
hmm.
but they are in increasing demand. So our goal at Prefer is to future-proof the food and beverages that are being threatened by climate change, just starting with coffee. So coffee is to start. We'll be launching a cacao-free chocolate
Okay.
sometime in the next year or two. The same problem that we're solving with coffee is happening in chocolate, which is increase in demand but a decrease in supply, so price is going crazy. So I mean, we're speaking with the same FMCG companies that we'd work with on the coffee side with chocolate as well. And there's other crops that are being threatened, like hazelnut, vanilla, citrus, that we can also make using our same infrastructure that we're building out, basically as a platform technology where we just change the inputs of feedstock, change the inputs of microbes, yeasts, fungi, and we could create all those other flavors in a more affordable and sustainable way. So it was really this big vision where
Hmm.
investors see a large enough market size, investors could see that we're speaking with the right people and that they're interested in. So there was demand from these folks as well, where we were able to raise that money with zero revenue. But yeah, we're going out to
Beautiful.
raise again, and it's a little more numbers focused now, and that's just
Yeah.
a whole different type of raise.
So were you bootstrapped originally, or did you have some angels backing you before this $2 million round?
It was a EF, Entrepreneur First, did a pre-seed, like 75K check.
Okay, wow, you managed to kind of leverage that quite well. What were the first things you like? Walk me through the process of building something like this from, just the idea, this vision to, I guess, a prototype. Like, were you doing stuff in your kitchen? Like, Tell me more about this. I'm really curious about the food tech industry.
Yeah, early days, it was all in DJ's kitchen. It
Okay.
was a bunch of glass jars fermenting a bunch of stuff. It was us roasting bread over his stove, like us try like so it was his kitchen was the R&D lab. And then we got a product out of there that we were able to show to Entrepreneur First.
Hmm.
And that's what got us 75K. And then we were able to get into a small bench in Singapore here in a space called Narasa, and that allowed us to get a little bit more precision in our experiments, get a
Hmm.
product that was a little bit better, brought that to customers, got a bunch of MOUs and LOIs to go raise money, and then got money to go get into a bigger facility, get through all the SFA regulatory stuff, and actually go to market. So we were able to go to market earlier this year in January.
Okay. And so again, I want to talk about yourself and stuff like that, but you mentioned DJ, your co-founder. So one of the big topics when I talk to founders, whether on or off the pod, is how to find the right co-founder. In my experience, I've had three businesses, and some co-founders worked out, some didn't. And I've always found that spending enough time with someone to really get to know them on a personal and professional level before committing to anything is kind of like dating, right? But a lot of founders don't have the time for that. They have a project and they just need a co-founder and they kind of rush into it. And then the first year is like, rosy glasses. And then second and third, when things really hit the fan, things break, right? So how did you meet DJ? How did you guys figure out that you were a right match? Are things going well? I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so I met DJ through Entrepreneur First,
Okay.
co-founder matching platform. And I think what was different and why we've been able to have a call it a healthy relationship up to this point, and I'm confident we'll still be able to, is that for the first hour or 2 hours of our meeting, we actually didn't talk about work. We were just talking about family, morals, ethics, values, like what would you do in this situation? What would you do in this situation? And I think that while we don't have the same values and beliefs on everything, at least we can respect each other's. And we come from very, very different backgrounds, but we see the world going in a similar way, and we have a similar vision about like how we can use fermentation to really recreate the food system. So yeah, there was just a couple things that we really believed on, like at the base, at the core, and our values and ethics lined up towards this vision of the future. And so I think coming from a place of that, even though we knew each other for 2 weeks before we started Prefer,
Hmm.
we've just been super lucky. We've been super lucky that we get along, and we treat Prefer like our child, and we always prefer before us, and we disagree really well. And I think all that in combination has been a healthy relationship so far.
Beautiful. And so what is his background, like technology for food already? Or yeah, so okay, so he had the science, you had business acumen. Is that how it works basically?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't touch on that at all because it was actually such a secondary to like us as people and who we are and like
Hmm.
where we see the world and philosophy and things of that nature. But we have really good complementary skills. I love sales, marketing, fundraising, building the company. Like I love it. He loves building tech. He loves flavors. And so I think the combination of me being sort of this crazy person wanting to do anything to use food as a lever to fight climate change. That's like
Hmm.
really my purpose behind it. And his purpose is to do really challenging things in flavors in food and beverage. And so the
Hmm.
fact that we're so like into whatever it is specifically really like fires us up, but it intersects at Prefer, where it's a way to fight climate change and make flavors. That's sort of why it works. And that's sort of what I meant by like maybe we don't have the same exact vision or we don't have the same exact values, like we're not interested in the same exact things, but at least we can align on this one thing. And that sort of is what we're doing.
Okay, cool. And so, you've been operating in the US, in Israel, and now in Southeast Asia, and you're passionate about sales. So I think you'll like this question. Is like, what challenges do you find in selling to Southeast Asian companies? Because I've been in sales for a long time across North America and Asia, and I can tell you a lot of differences, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, so I will caveat this by saying I never worked in the US. I only went to school in the US.
Okay.
And so I don't know the US market super well. But in Asia, especially selling to the larger business that you sell to, the more price sensitive they will be. So that's one thing that has actually been a huge positive for us because that's one of our big value adds is that we can be
Hmm.
more affordable. And then in terms of style of communication, I found in Israel, I would have no issues with being as direct as needed. So like you get into a
Hmm.
conversation, 5 minutes in, it's like nice to meet you, I'm Jake, blah blah blah, and then you're like, okay, what am I giving you? What are you giving me? What's the price?
Hmm.
And like that's it. But I mean, getting to Singapore, it's still decently direct, but like you're not gonna talk about price right away. Like maybe you don't even bring it up in the first meeting. And
Yeah.
luckily, my co-founder DJ has been super helpful, especially because we have Singaporean shareholders and we work with the government a lot. And so you have to sort of do a little bit more of a dance. But yeah,
Hmm.
DJ's been helping me through all that.
Yeah, a lot of relationship building rather than ROI sort of logic driven decision making. I found that.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
that's,
so
that's a better way to put it for sure. More relationships and long term.
which is it's not a bad thing, but you definitely have to get used to it, and the pace of it is a lot slower, right? Just the same way relationships take time, business takes time here.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your sales at all, like how you're doing thus far, or is it kind of under wraps, or you can't talk about it too much?
Like me as a person or prefer?
Well, I prefer, yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How are we doing? Like in terms, yeah, I guess on the traction side.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we launched in January this year with this proof of concept, like these ready to drink oat latte bottles that was
Hmm.
always meaning to serve as lead generation for these bigger clients. And it's worked. It's worked because now we're in R&D with I can't share exactly who, but go in the supermarket and look down the brands of coffee and we're in R&D with them trying to make a
Okay.
product. So I guess on the oat latte, we've really had a lot of success in channels like corporate pantries, small cafes, and some small scale retailers. And we're super excited to launch a canned coffee under our own brand early next year, which we're planning to first scale through B2B2C channels, so hotels, restaurants, cafes, and food service catering to corporates. But also, if that goes well, we might even start to explore more retail. So yeah, that's sort of exciting. And yeah, on the B2B side, we will be launching an instant coffee that will then provide to the large instant coffee manufacturers where they can blend in. So that will also be Q1 of next year as well.
Okay. But always with the optic of blending, and that's kind of like the model.
If they want to launch a product where it's 100% prefer, we're open to that. I think that they need to de-risk it a little bit on their side first by blending it in to start. And then if all things go well, maybe one day they're launching a 100% preferred product.
Okay. Yeah, and you know what? I really like your like now that you've explained the vision of sort of finding ways to replace certain ingredients in flavor profiles to lower costs, add a carbon footprint thingy. I think that's a really good vision, and I think that's probably why people invested in you guys. Where do you like how far do you see that going? Because you mentioned citrus, chocolate, hazelnut, etc. Like, what's the massive vision for you guys?
The massive vision is to have a portfolio of different flavors, food and beverages that we can offer in a more affordable and more sustainable way than what can be done using traditional agriculture. And then basically be providing this portfolio to the biggest food and beverage companies in the world. And maybe even one day we are setting up our own manufacturing in all of these food and beverage companies and just taking a revenue share via a
Hmm.
licensing fee from our patents. And so that's a realistic scenario where we are building out manufacturing and then just taking revenue shares from their manufacturing. If not that, then there's a realistic world in which our technology gets acquired by
Hmm.
one of these large food and beverage companies with a lot of brands, or some just large food and beverage ingredient company, or even a flavor house. So I think those are the directions that we could see it going far, far in the future.
What's the IP that you're able to sort of protect? Is it the flavor profile? Is it the process of obtaining that flavor profile? I'm not too familiar with the food tech industry, so quite curious about it.
No, it's impressive. You're pretty spot on. It's the process of the flavor creation from byproducts of food production. So we've made some really broad claims on inputs that we can use, processes that you can use within the fermentation, and processes within the roasting, and
Hmm.
then flavors that it creates. So anyone that would try to create a product that is tasting just as, basically, we're able to defend anyone trying to be just as affordable or taste just as much like coffee. And there'd be a
Hmm.
massive gap either in price or taste, unless they'd be impeding on our patents.
The fact that you're using sort of third-party raw materials, let's call them, does that kind of add a risk to your product because you're kind of relying on a certain byproduct or a certain sort of leftover material that might differ over time depending on the region, depending on the provider, depending on the seasons, maybe even. So I'm curious how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, so long story short is that we're getting our products in the same exact moment in their production cycle. So it's just as though we're getting it as an ingredient. That's the same consistency every time because they have really stringent standard operating procedures in place where everything is the same every time. It may in fact be more consistent than getting it from the farm because if you're harvesting once a year, whatever that crop is, who knows what the flavor, what the weather conditions would have been like that
Mm,
year. So it might be quite variable. So there's a world in which actually we're not only more affordable and more sustainable than coffee, but we're providing a more consistent product no matter what is going on with the climate. So that's been a big value add in these conversations with these large, fast-moving consumer good companies because they're looking for stability. Because
mhm.
with all the increasing climate change or and extreme weather patterns, the crop is becoming more inconsistent. So having it in a more controlled environment's actually been a big positive for us.
And I understand that. I think that that makes a lot of sense because you're taking an already processed product. So yeah, the consistency might be there. I'm thinking more from one region to another. You might have to adapt your recipe and your process a little, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe I'm just a huge optimist, but again, I think that's a huge positive for us because like, if we're manufacturing in the Philippines, for example, and we're using Philippine soy, wheat, barley, then if anything else, we're just creating flavors that they're more used to and they're more accustomed to anyways. And then if we're
That's
manufacturing in the Netherlands using their bread, their soy, their barley, they're similar to that. I mean, they're used to those flavors anyways. So wherever we
mhm.
go, we're just going to be using the flavors that they're already accustomed to. So if nothing else, we might just trigger some nostalgia, worst case.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, look, being optimistic is probably one of the most important traits of a founder, but everything you said makes sense. So I think you're onto something. Um, I've been speaking to a lot of investors in the region who have kind of an impact goal. And I guess similar to what you're working on, a big problem is how do you have an impact or like a sustainable goal while being extremely profitable and extremely growth driven?
Yeah.
And how do you figure that out? Because, obviously what you're saying, it makes sense on paper, but like VC model is like hyperscale, massive exits, etc. But impact and sustainability and circular economy is not always compatible. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. It's a really important question because we're raising money from people who need to bring back return to of investment to their LPs, or else these funds just don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can give a specific industry example for food tech. Anyone building out sustainable food and beverage. I think that there's three things that you have to be doing at least one of these three things in order for it to work. One is on price. You must be a product that is the same price, if not more affordable than what you're trying to supplement or replace. Two is on taste. It must taste just as good, if not better, than what you're trying to replace. And three, it must be as healthy, if not healthier, than what you're trying to supplement. And so, what those are sort of the three key pillars that we focus on all the time. So, for us, we are more affordable, so we can check that box. On
Hmm.
taste, the way that we're able to at least match taste to start is by doing the blending with these products. So we know that when you're blending in 25% prefer, it tastes just the same. And so that's where we can come in and check that box. And on
Hmm.
health, we are making sure to use all natural ingredients that anyone's grandma would know what bread, soy, and barley are, and making it
Hmm.
really, really short. So we're making sure that people don't make any "this is processed" claims. So those are really what we're trying to focus on, because we learned from the plant-based meat boom and bust that like it was more expensive, it tasted worse, and it was less healthy, and it just didn't work. People aren't going to pull their wallet out for sustainability. So yeah, we need to do all those other things better if it's going to work.
Yeah, it's hilarious that you went that direction because my follow-up question was literally about, the impossible foods of the world that are claiming to change the world and making a much unhealthier product that for some reason people choose to ignore. So I was going to ask your opinion on that, but clearly you already have that.
Yeah, I mean, we often get bundled with plant-based meat, and it's not frustrating for me because I totally understand where they're coming from. But I think if we were to boil it down to one thing, this is more affordable, and
Hmm.
plant-based is really struggling to reach price parity. And so that's where we can sort of unlock these B2B partnerships because for the first time, we are basically capitalism is the driver of our success, and as a bonus, the earth will benefit. But it hasn't been able to go in that order until we've started this at Prefer.
Yeah, makes sense. I assume, given your vision and stuff like that, you have a big R&D sort of, maybe not department at this stage because you're still early stage, but like research, innovation, all of that is a big component of your business. Can you walk me through that? Again, from a curiosity standpoint, I'd love to know what your innovation department looks like and how do you stay ahead of the competitive landscape?
Yeah. So DJ leads R&D and production. And within both R&D and production, there's a ton of innovation that happens. So within R&D, we are focused on making the most coffee-like flavors. So we have ex scientists from the biggest flavor houses in the world coming in, trying different ingredients, trying different microbes, trying different fermentation, roasting processes all the time. And we're actually having them spend around 10% of their time on our next product already, cacao-free chocolate as well. So that's what's
Hmm.
going on in R&D. On the scale-up side, this has been the biggest challenge yet of scaling up bean-free coffee. This is not
Hmm.
something that you can co-manufacture with a third party because nowhere in the world are there having a coffee roastery and a beer brewery under the same roof. And so we
Hmm.
have to go out and build ourselves. So scale up guys are always working on how can we automate this more? How can we bring down costs? And that's why we're moving production outside of Singapore after this next fundraise so that we can really um, on top of increasing automation, decrease cost per square meter and decrease cost of labor so that we can reach this vision of being more affordable.
Okay. And obviously the real estate startup was your first go at entrepreneurship. This is the second one. Are you finding sort of any difficulties in being a founder versus being an employee? What are some of the horror stories you've gone through in this journey so far?
I think it's just more obsession, more responsibility. But I mean, I love it. I am super fulfilled building this out. I often ask the question, is there anything in the world I'd rather be doing? And there really isn't. Like, this is awesome. Get to work on something I'm passionate about in climate change, get to make large decisions in a company that I truly do believe is changing the world. So I'm super pumped up on it. Do I like feel beat and burnt out sometimes? Like, yeah, but generally, if I get a good night's sleep and take a day at the beach, I'm all right. So yeah, I think being an employee was frustrating for me because I would do a lot of input, do a lot of work, and see not that much output, or sometimes I put a lot of
Mm,
something and nothing would come of it, and that was super frustrating. Especially on the investment side, investing is like super mentally exciting, and like I get excited. It's fun, but then like you see nothing out of it for at least a few years,
mhm.
or investment doesn't even get made. So yeah, the ability to make big decisions on something that I find really interesting and then see output for the work pretty quickly. I like that much more.
That's interesting. That's exactly what I like about it as well. I was in finance before. I know you don't want my background too much, but like after a year in finance where I was making decisions all day and having no output whatsoever or no impact on the business, I realized that was the most frustrating thing ever, and I could never do it for life.
100%. But it's super like mentally exciting. I don't know. I found it like from an academic level, it's almost like theory work. But then after a year or two of that, I was like, oh, I need more reward. Maybe I'm just like a Gen Z like that. I like need instant gratification. But yeah, I didn't have patience for that.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say like the Gen Z thing, I see where you're coming from. But I think as a human, you don't want to do something and not see a result. Like it's almost biological, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Cool. And kind of wrapping things up here, you're still young, you're still early in your career, but if you look back and you saw your younger self, what kind of advice would you give yourself while you're starting entrepreneurship, and maybe things to avoid, things to focus on, etc.
If I was speaking to my younger self, um, it just gets better. Like life has just gotten better. The more that you find what you're interested in, the more you can have fun with it, the more relationships that you build, like it all just compounds and has only gotten better so far. So to anyone that thinks that they're peaking in high school or college, I just don't think so. I think it's just constantly getting better.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's definitely ups and downs, but
Yeah.
if you keep grinding, things do get better. I love it. Is there something you want to shout out to as we kind of conclude this pod?
Yeah, I guess anyone in Singapore, thanks for listening, and please go out and try Prefer. All of our locations are at prefer.coffee. Every bottle that you buy, every bottle that you drink is proving to these large FMCGs, these large food and beverage companies, that this is something that the world is interested in. So every coffee you buy really does help our mission. So appreciate that. Yeah, please follow along. I'm on LinkedIn, Jake Berber, and easy to my email's on there as well if you ever want to reach out.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll definitely make sure to link you. And good luck for your fundraise. I'm sure you'll do well, and I can't wait to follow your journey along on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's it for the pod. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate you.